Good afternoon, everyone. It's 5 o'clock on Tuesday, October 19th, 2021. And I'd like to call to order the Administration Committee meeting. Can we do roll call, please?
Supervisor Long?
Here.
Supervisor Cook?
Present.
Supervisor Hard?
Present.
Supervisor Peterson?
Here.
Supervisor Peavy?
Here.
We have a quorum.
As far as the minutes, we have two minutes from two of our meetings, as well as an additional meeting minutes from the Government Center Building Subcommittee, of which that subcommittee is a subcommittee of this committee, so we can approve the minutes. Did anyone have any comments or edits or suggestions or changes on those three sets of minutes? Hearing none, the minutes will stand as published. Okay, we're ready for public comment. Anyone from the public would like to make a comment? They're all out enjoying this gorgeous day. Any public comment? Okay, let's move on to our business items. We'll start out with the financial report for September.
All right. Thank you, Chairman Long. So just a couple of things to point out in the financial report. Let's see, I'm going to make it just a little bit bigger here so you guys can see it. Overall, everything on the financial report is looking good. I was going to point out just a couple of highlights. So the retirement health savings, we are up over 600,000 for this year. Luckily, last year we had transferred fund balance from the HRA, so they still have fund balance to cover this. But we had a lot of retirements from some very senior employees this past year. One of the changes to the health insurance plan that affected retirees probably affected that a little bit. We do have a few more big retirements coming up. But that's probably one of the reasons why this year's payouts on the retirement health savings is larger than normal. And then...
Any impact of that big red number?
No, because we have enough fund balance to cover it. So luckily, we'd pre-planned really with that HRA fund that we stopped using that had the leftover fund balance of about $1 million. So we had transferred that in. So that fund for the retirement health savings still has a positive fund balance. So we're using it up fast, but there's no immediate negative impact because of that. On the capital improvements then, just two other things I was going to point out. One, on the capital improvements, we have the 2015 Phase 2 radio system upgrade. That project is finally going to be closed out. So after 6 years, they finished the last expense related to that system, which was one of the water towers in Hudson, I believe, was being repainted, and they had to move the wires off and then put the wires back on. That was the last expense associated with that. That repainting project had been delayed for a couple of years, which is what this project was being held open for. And then on the sales tax, let me see if I can make that bigger so you guys can see that. So $1,096,000 was received in July, which will be our largest month on record. So you can see we've only broken $1 million 3 times, twice this year though. So another new record number for sales tax collection for the county. So good things. Are there any other questions on anything else in the financial report?
I think we're good. Thank you, Ken. Okay, let's move on to number 2, the resolution adopting the final county supervisory district plan. Got a lot of nice maps to look at.
Chairman Long, committee. So we have the final supervisor district
plan prepared. We took some suggestions for the supervisor districts in the town of Hudson, worked with the city of Hudson, so there's some changes in those districts at this point. And I've had conversation with the city of New Richmond. They've adjusted or created their beginning wards to our supervisory districts. So we have a final plan in place, and I'm going to bring up a couple of little slides here on a PowerPoint just to continue on. So the tentative plan was adopted by the county board, sent to the municipalities for creation of their municipal wards. Municipal wards need to match supervisor district boundaries. So then we worked with the local municipalities to adjust their wards, make sure that they accommodate the municipal election districts. We want to have as few ballots as possible. Presenting the final plan hopefully to the county board November 2nd if you approve it, and then we'll report the wards and the supervisory plans to the state. Changes, the tentative to the final plan. We still ended up with the same percent deviation, 3.84 on both plans, so that's good. You should be under 10. That was one of our priorities. So there were changes to the boundaries of 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 in the town and city of Hudson. We were able to reconcile the town of Hudson and the city of Hudson wards and the Hudson aldermanic districts. The city of Hudson worked out really well. It was because their total population fits for these 3 supervisor districts very easily, and therefore you're able to create aldermanic districts and wards. So this would be a blow up of that area. We'll start here in the town of Hudson. This black line is where the tentative boundaries were when you approved the tentative plan. And working with the town, we were able to adjust. Now District 8 is here in the light blue. It's more compact. Before it went up into here, this was District 8. And District 3 dropped down into this area following the black, so now it's more compact. District 3 follows this line. And then District 4 is more compact as well, because in the tentative plan it went out here, and now we've brought it back in here, added this to 4. So that's some of the changes that you're looking at. And again, now these districts are actually, I believe, more compact, and they fit with what they were previously as well, a little bit better. Again, taking into the changes in population throughout. District 8 is actually a little bit below the desired level, which is good because there'll probably be growth in 8. And District 3 is pretty much right on the desired population, and District 4 is a little low, so it can accommodate additional growth. Then moving into the city districts, you can see where those changes were. The previous District 6, the tentative district, was like this, dropped below the freeway. We brought it back up above the freeway, but then we took a little bit of this area and added it to 6. Again, it's more compact. Number 7 went up to, was right here on Crestview. Now that goes up to the interstate. It's a good dividing point. And District 5 is still north and south of the interstate, but it's most of the housing that's adjacent to the St. Croix River. So those are the changes from the tentative to the final plan. And again, we have that same overall deviation, so it fits really good. City of Hudson has reviewed this and their alderman and ward plans and are happy with it. City of New Richmond has adjusted their ward plans to our supervisor districts, and I think they still have some work to do to get their wards finalized in their aldermanic districts, how they want to do that. So that's a map of the entire plan. I changed the colors from what it was previously so that you would know what was the tentative and the final. Recommend the final plan to the county board. There would be a public hearing November 2nd, and then there has to be a Class A notice of the spring election, and that would be the next steps. Any questions?
Any questions? For one, I looked at the maps and they did look a lot more compact and the lines looked a little cleaner, so thank you for your additional work on that,
Yep,
Brad.
yep.
I do want to ask Supervisor Art, I know you had some concerns about the way New Richmond was split up. Has that been addressed, or is it close, or?
It's going to make for an interesting election. That's what I can say. But what I will say is that working with the entire county and coming in at the deviations that you did is phenomenal work. That is just phenomenal, to have that low a deviation within all of the districts that you worked with.
Thank you.
And I know New Richmond is trying very hard
Yep,
with a new city clerk and new GIS. This is a whole new animal for them.
right, right.
So they're trying their best, but with the way New Richmond is populating, it's going to be a challenge all the way through. So we do the best we can and hope that we don't have any more district splits.
Right, right.
So thank you very much.
Right, okay, thank you. And I think if there would have been more time, I think we would have, the results in Hudson were good, and we could look at some other things too, but I think overall it's pretty good now.
We entertain a motion for the resolution. Supervisor Peterson, second? Second Supervisor Ard. Any further discussion? Given none, I think we're ready to vote. All those in favor of the resolution adopting the final county supervisory district plan indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That motion passes. Thank you, Brett. Okay, we'll move on to the third business item, resolution updating personnel policies, Chapter 1.
I think the agenda may have been misleading, as it looks like there's only one policy, which there is, but actually this policy is taking Article 1 from our current handbook, which is objectives and scope. It's taking Article 2, affirmative action and equal employment opportunity, and it's taking Article 7, Section 1, representation, and combining all into one policy, which is this introduction policy. So it's quite lengthy, but most of it is what we're actually removing. So I do have some bullet points that I can read through, and I'll try to be succinct because there is a lot. And then afterwards, if there's any questions, just let me know. So if you go to pages 72, I believe it is in your packets, that's where the actual updated new policy is. And I'll go through each of those sections and say what changed. I'll wait till Ken gets there. Oh, there you go. Go back up a little bit. There you go. So in 1.1, the policy statement, we just updated overall policy statement, so it encompasses all of those three components that we talked about. And then for the purpose, we created one overall purpose statement. Purpose statements are now listed within each individual policy, so we created one for this introduction policy. And if any time I'm going too slow or too fast, just let me know. For 1.3 definitions, we added overall definition statements and removed most definitions because those are also now listed within each individual policy. 1.4 authority, there was no changes to what that was in the previous policy. 1.5 equal opportunity employment, we updated the language for clarity, but the intent behind this policy still stands. For 1.6 affirmative action, we replaced the current language surrounding affirmative action with suggested language from Alera HR. Alera HR is an HR-specific resource with guidance from tenured HR professionals and attorneys. We have access to them through our relationship with our insurance broker, J.A. Counter. The policy language suggested by Alera HR provides general overall affirmative action statements, and that additional details can be found within the county's annual affirmative action plan. We identified that we were one of the only counties with a designated affirmative action policy within its actual handbook. We looked at counties like Barron, Chippewa, Eau Claire, Milwaukee, and Dunn. For 1.7, employment relationship, This is a new suggested policy to distinguish what an employment relationship with SCC entails and how it correlates with the Fair Labor Standards Act. For 1.8 elected officials, we removed examples to simplify the policy. 1.9, the Human Resources section of the Administrative Policies and Procedures Manual, we removed second part of final sentence, the HR section, as well as the rest of the County Administrative Policies and Procedures Manual shall be subject to periodic review and approval by the Administration Committee. This is not actually a current practice, and the Administrative Policies and Procedures Manual actually as a whole does not yet exist, but we are going to do an inventory of all those policies that could be considered administrative versus personnel, and then we will build a document as determined needed. 1.10 for department work rules, there were no changes. 1.11, non-elected department heads, we changed this to just read, non-elected department heads are at-will employees and may be removed at the discretion of the county administrator. We took out the verbiage that said, with the expectation that such removal shall be reviewed by the administration committee at its next scheduled meeting or upon the calling of a special meeting. That actually has not been existing practice either. For 1.12 amendments, we removed the section that we no longer practice formally, that policies are still brought to the Staff Advisory Committee for review and feedback, but there is not a designated timeline, so we removed a reference to the designated timeline. And then we also adjusted 1.12.3 from annual review to policy review and amendment process, updated the language that states it will be reviewed annually, the handbook will. We updated that to say periodically, as we will review the handbook and policies as need dictates. So there may be different legal compliance needs or requests as requests for review arises. And then we deleted language regarding the handbook review that was repetitive. And so handbook already states that it is reviewed with interested stakeholders, so where there was repetitive language about that, we removed that piece. 1.14 on representation, there was no changes there. We're getting to the last one here. And so responsibilities and authority, we removed this policy. Through research of surrounding counties, no others had a similar policy. Essential functions of the county administrator, HR director, department heads, supervisors, and employees are outlined in their job descriptions already. And in the rules and bylaws for the committees and county board, that's where their responsibilities lie. So it was determined that that's not necessarily something that would belong in an employee handbook, is the rules and bylaws for the committees. So I know that was a lot. Are there any specific questions I can answer?
I do have a question. Are there any particular items that you would consider pretty substantial that really stand out that either this committee or the board would want to make sure that they were aware of?
The substantial changes were really removing, there was job descriptions listed for the administrator, HR director, and so we removed those as those don't belong in the actual, we didn't think that they belonged in a personnel handbook. So that was probably the major change, is updating or taking out that information. Other than that, there was nothing else controversial. This went to staff advisory. I don't believe we had any feedback or questions or concerns expressed from staff advisory. I'm just trying to look through everything else. I really don't think there was anything controversial that was brought up. Yeah, not that comes to mind, other than we just removed those job descriptions that were listed. Is there anything else, Ken, that you can recall? I didn't. Okay.
Any questions? Guess we need a motion.
I would move to approve the personnel policy changes.
Supervisor Ard, second. Supervisor Peavy. Any further discussion or questions for Tara? Seeing none, we'll vote. All those in favor of the resolution signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And that motion carries. Thank you for your explanation, Tara. Okay, we'll move on to number 4, resolution adopting the 2022 budget and establishing the tax levy.
So this resolution will recommend the adoption of the county administrator recommended version that we went over at the committee of the whole. And then it establishes the tax levy. And these are the specific dollar amounts that go into the tax levy for the total that we'll then submit, which is $37,711,354.13. So the special charges from the state, that's a negative amount this year. That's not what we normally see. It's usually, I don't know, a couple $1,000s or a few $100s. It's negative this year because of some credits they gave back that we don't typically see. Otherwise, everything else is pretty standard. Our general operating levy, which is limited by our levy limits, the debt service obligation that we have, bridge aids, which are specific then for townships, as are the special purpose levy for library aid that only affects those municipalities that do not maintain their own library, funded at a certain extent. So that's the total that makes up the levy.
Questions?
I can make a motion to approve, adopt the 2022 budget, and establish the tax levy.
Supervisor Cook?
I'll second.
Second, Supervisor Peterson. Any further discussion or questions? I do have a question. Did you get any feedback after our committee of the whole meeting in terms of any concerns, any changes, any feedback at all?
Zero.
Great. Okay, I guess we're ready to vote. All those in favor of the resolution signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All any opposed? Motion carries. I also want to at least thank Ken and all the department heads and everyone involved in creating that, because it was, I'm sure, a substantial effort, and and did a great job given the priorities that you were given from the board. So thank you. All right, let's move on to number 5, resolution amending purchasing policy.
Okay, so I reviewed the current procure to pay policy. One of the changes we did make right off the bat is the title of the policy. We changed it back to purchasing policy. This is what everyone calls it. This is how we refer to it. Just makes sense to change it back to purchasing versus the procure to pay. So that's one of the changes we made to the policy. Also, we did, you'll see a couple carry through changes in there. We revised the lower end of the dollar amount for the purchases from $3,500 to $5,000. So this will match the fixed asset reporting requirements, and it also allows more flexibility for the staff on those smaller purchases. We also, in section 4.5, we added clarification on the use of personal credit cards on county purchases. What this will say is that you are not allowed to use a personal P card for a county purchase. People can rack up points or benefits by using their own cards for county purchases. So we just made that clarification in the handbook that they are not allowed to do that. And then in 6.8, we did clarify the accounting procedure for trade-in assets. We no longer use that practice. It's more advantageous for us to sell the assets that were no longer in use versus trading them in. We get more back for that, and then we'll use those dollars to purchase a new asset.
Okay.
That is all the changes I have to that policy. Are there any questions?
Questions? Seemed pretty clear to me. We have a motion to approve the resolution. Supervisor Peavy, second. Supervisor Peterson. Any further discussion or questions? Seeing none, let's go ahead and vote. All those are in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Leah. Okay, we'll move on to the last item. The sun's still out, so we're doing good. Review the citizen and business surveys 1 year later. And I had actually requested to have this on the agenda at some point. If you recall, we did the survey in 2020, businesses and citizens. I had kind of hoped that some of the results would be taken into consideration in the strategic planning process, but for whatever reason, it wasn't. So I didn't want the information to get lost and just kind of fall behind the cracks. So I thought it would be worth at least an additional discussion to highlight if there's anything in particular that we might want to keep in mind or address. I know that Administrator Witt put together kind of a brief summary, if I can get there. Well, you have it up there. And do you want to address that briefly?
Sure. So what I did was I took a look at the different planning efforts that we've done over the past year, starting with the survey results and, what were the surveys saying? What did goals and priorities say? What did the work plan for the administrator say? What did our strategic goals say? And really trying to identify where the overlaps are, to see where the similarities are and to see if we were missing anything. Did anything drop off that we've just completely lost? And I don't think we have. And I think when you look at the different documents that we worked through and the different groups that worked on them, you might see some slight variations, but a lot of similarity and overlap. So the business survey, basically the business survey was saying that, St. Croix County is a great place to live and to work and to operate a business. They had a couple of things. There were challenges for them, namely hiring, which you'll see as a recurring theme throughout all of the different documents that we worked on, and challenges with affordable childcare, public transportation, parking at some of their work sites. When we looked at what the citizen survey results, they too very much like St. Croix County, which is probably why we're the second fastest growing county in the state. But they liked it also as a place to visit. So some of the natural areas that we have, plus the downtowns and commercial areas, were highlighted by our citizen survey. They also identified areas for improvement in transportation, utility infrastructure, and government transparency. You could really tell the timing of this survey, though. I thought it was very interesting. They said it was a recurring theme throughout the citizen surveys that they would feel more comfortable returning to retail and restaurant if masking was enforced. So you can tell the time of the survey by some of those results, which I think actually lends a little bit to maybe to the government transparency one too. I would hope that has some of the relationship to why they said that needed work, because I think we work very hard on transparency. So when you looked at strategic planning goals, then we broke that into maybe 4 different areas. One was community well-being, which we probably focused a little bit different because strategic goals were heavily influenced by department heads and county board supervisors, and we have mandated services. So our community well-being is probably different focus than what the citizens and business survey was. It's more heavily focused on public safety and health and wellness initiatives through HHS, but some overlap there with the standard of living in the community. Public infrastructure, we covered probably a little bit more on highway than what I think the public was looking at, but we do overlap with broadband. I think is one of the areas that the public was looking at for public infrastructure. Natural resources, we highlight that. That's an area that makes St. Croix County a great place to live and to visit. So I think there's some overlap there. And then service delivery, I think the overlap with service delivery is the employee recruitment. I mean, we see on the county level the same issues the businesses are having in recruiting and retaining employees. So that's an area where we have some similarities to the business survey. When we talk about budget priorities, and this one was the first of all of these items that was probably set after the survey results, but the first action items by the county board, you can see this is probably more heavily focused on the employee recruitment and retention issues that we've identified, and less on maybe some of the other priorities. Although I can tell you in our recommended budget that you guys have just recommended to the county board, it does cover more than just employee recruitment and retention. We are covering a lot of the other areas from our strategic goals. And when we get into our action planning phase and over the next year budget cycle, I think you'll see more of that interaction between our goals and priorities and budget initiatives. And then finally, the county administrator work plan. These are the areas that you identified for the county administrator to be working on. Strategic planning, which is going to tie everything together. The broadband, we're expecting those results within the next couple of weeks here. So we'll get that and we'll be able to take a step forward with that. Facilities, government center expansion is the big topic there that we're going to be discussing over the next 6 months. And then employee improvement plan, ways to recruit and retain the employees that we have is still an ongoing goal and objective for us. So I think you can see where the overlap is. So I don't know if you guys saw anything else within those surveys or in any of the other documents that you feel is not being addressed. We can make sure that we pick that up somewhere through one of these processes.
Is there anything that really kind of popped out at anyone with regard to the survey results that Ken didn't cover, or you want to emphasize anything that he did? I'll throw out a couple things. I was a little concerned, and I was looking at, this was page 116 in the packet. Right about the middle of the page, there was the title that says, while most ratings of the governance were positive, some areas could be improved. And this was just highlights, but this is where it came out that fewer than half of the respondents, and I went and looked at the percentages, and they were kind of in the low 40s, which I was a little surprised. Fewer than half, gave positive ratings to the job county government does at being open and transparent. And also, I thought was important here is informing residents about issues facing the community. So I know that this is kind of an ongoing effort that we're doing about trying to do outreach to our citizens to make sure they have some awareness of some of the issues, but I just wanted to highlight that. I thought that was really important. And then the other item, one other item was on page 123, and I know this comes up periodically as well, if I can find it. Where was it? Oh, I probably have the wrong page. But anyhow, the topic was the availability of affordable housing. And that seems to pop up a lot in various conversations, and I thought that was another item that I found that I just wanted to highlight. Let me go to 182. I'll make this quick. There was, as far as the businesses community, ratings of public trust for areas such overall direction, honesty, and the value of services for the taxes paid received ratings that were lower, hovering around 50%. And from the business community, that kind of concerned me a little bit. And I know somewhere else in here it talked about the lack of connection between the business community and the county services, concerning as well. And I'm just kind of highlighting a couple things that I found in this survey that I just didn't want to get lost, I guess. So that's all I had, just a couple items. I don't know if anyone had any other items that they wanted to highlight. I just didn't want to lose sight of this particular survey because I thought there was some really good information in here. And thank you, Ken, for putting together your summary. I thought that was very helpful. Supervisor Cook.
As a follow-up to that, I guess, do we have a similar benchmark, historically, that we can compare these results to in previous years, or do we not have one of those? And if we don't, I think, following some of your comments, Chair Long, I think the survey, it looks like the survey was sent out in September 2020, is that correct? So I think it's positive that we've already really taken a step to, from the transparency and communication standpoint, we hired a public information officer, and that, I don't know if that we've even had, by the time the survey was out, that we even had time to see the impacts of that. So it'll be very interesting if we do the same kind of survey going forward to see, if that, I'm assuming, because Adam's doing such a great job, I'm assuming that we will have, higher ratings on communication. I'm hoping that's because that was the purpose.
Yeah, we don't have a prior survey similar to this that we could compare against ourselves. This did compare us against national benchmarks, so other communities similar to us was the comparison. I don't know how frequently I would want to do this survey. I mean, it certainly wouldn't be an every year thing because it costs $16,000 to do it. So, I mean, it's fairly pricey to do, but periodically, I mean, I can see us doing that just to compare where we are over larger blocks of time. And yes, Adam's doing a great job, so I would anticipate all of those numbers to be up by now. So that was also right in the midst of proposals to do an HHS ordinance enforcing masking. And so there was a lot of influence into some of the comments that were made into that.
Had to remind us of that, didn't you? I'm sorry. Other comments? Any other questions or suggestions? Highlights, lowlights? Okay, well, thank you for taking a second look at that, and thank you, Ken, for your summarized comments. Okay, we are now down to requests for future agenda items. Don't see any requests, any announcements and correspondence. Okay, not for today. So I will, 5:37 might be a record. I'll adjourn the meeting. The date of our next meeting will be Tuesday, November 16th, if I have my calendar correct. Okay, thank you all. The sun's still out.